Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
A pleasant good afternoon to you. We welcome you to another Working for You program. I am Lesroy Williams. We thank you very much for tuning in to today's program, and we thank you for week to week listening to this program, getting information in terms of what is happening in the government and so on. Today we are going to be discussing an important topic, that of course of work, what we refer to as labor. And I have with me today representatives from the Department of Labor who will be discussing key issues pertaining to the department and its work. I have with me Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labor, Mr. Ron Dublin Collins. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I also have with me Labour Commissioner, Ms. Shernell James. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think it's your second time on this program.
Yes, it is.
And I have Mr. Lesroy Brown, my namesake, who is a unit head for Labour Inspection, Occupational Safety and Health. To all of you, welcome again to this program.
Thank you.
Okay, we have just celebrated or observed World Day for Safety and Health at Work. And the Permanent Secretary did give an address on this day, which was on ZIZ and in the media. Safety and health at work, of course, is only one area in which the Department of Labor is involved in.
Correct.
But I want to begin by asking, what is the role and the function of the Labor Department?
The role of the Labor Department is to carry out a number of labor administrative issues in regarding to workers and employers. We act as a mediator between employers and workers to ensure that there is industrial peace and harmony in the world of work. So we do a number of things. We function on a number of areas. One, we function as labor inspectors, where we are mandated by law to go into the world of work and to inspect workplaces to ensure that they are in compliance with the labor laws, that the condition in which workers are employed under is decent, and to ensure that employers adhere to all aspects in regards to labor. We also mandated by law to help find work for persons. Therefore, job seekers come into the Department of Labor, and we help to match them along with their skill sets with employers who are in turn utilize the services of the Department of Labor to find workers. We also deal with social protection, whereby the Department of Labor has two social protection schemes, one being the Severance Payment Fund, the other being the Long Service Gratuity, whereby in the first instance, if you are laid off from work or you are without a job because of no reason of your own, this social protection fund is there to help you, to tie you over until you find a job. The other one is based on a worker who would be in a particular employment for a certain number of years, 10 years as the law says, and determine that after 10 years they would like to move on to another scope within their career, and so they opt to retire after 10 years or resign, and they can claim the long service gratuity. Right now we only open to two sectors, which is the hospitality and the manufacturing sector. We also do what is called conciliation and mediation, whereby a worker who may have issues with him or her employer can come to the Department of Labor. We can conciliate on the matter. If it needs to be, mediate on it, and so doing help the worker in terms of recovering benefits, reinstatement in the job, and issues of that nature. We also do research and statistics. It's vital that labor statistics, which guide employment, it guides trending policy, etc. And so the Department of Labor is also mandated to do that. We have an international side to us where we, as members, St. Kitts and Nevis of the International Labour Organization, are members of ILO and other international agencies, and we are expected to carry out reporting mechanism to these organizations. And so World Day for Safety and Health falls under the International Labour Organization, and so we observe as members of the ILO all these days that bring awareness, and so hence that's one of our mandates.
Okay, good. My second question is based on what you said at the end about the World Day of Safety and Health at Work, which is celebrated, of course, annually on April 28th. And the significance of this day, if you can shed some light on that, and the theme for this year, Generation Safe and Healthy. I realized that this year as well you had the World Day Against Child Labor, that they came together in a joint campaign to improve, of course, safety and health of young workers and child labor. Can you elaborate for me a bit on this?
The World Day for Safety and Health started in 2001. April 28th is the day in which it is observed. But before that, April 28th was a day where the International Trade Union Movement would observe for honoring persons who might have died as a result of an occupational accident or disease. And so they would commemorate this day. And so ILO, when it realized that it wanted to have a day for promoting safety and health in the workplace, chose this day in which to observe and also commemorate persons who would have lost their life as a result of occupational diseases and accident. And St. Kitts and Nevis first observed the International Labour Organization World Day for Safety and Health at Work in 2003. And each year the team takes from it a particular area in respect to the functions that the ILO carry out. For example, this year we have the World Day for Safety and Health, and we also have the World Day for the Elimination of Child Labor coming together. Because the World Day for Safety and Health is April 28th, and World Day for the Elimination of Child Labor is on the 12th of June. And they combine this day to bring awareness to the plights that young people go through in their work. Because the statistics says that 541 million young people out of 3 billion workers employed.
That is 15 to 24?
Yes, the age is 15 employed. Some of them, 36 million, are involved in what is called hazardous child labor, whereby they're working mine, they're working in illegal prostitution, gun running, running of illegal drugs, the drug trafficking of persons. They work in some very long and strenuous hours. And in accordance with the convention, a child who is between the age of 12 to the age of 18 is still a child. And as such, even if you would like to introduce them to the world of work, to give them some sort of ethics, if they are involved in work, it's only light work. If a child is working and it's affecting their moral well-being, their physical and mental well-being, it affects their right to go to school, it affects their learning capacity. In its sense, it's child labor. You know, we like to say we don't have no child labor, but if a child is falling asleep in school every day and the teacher asks, why are you sleeping? Don't you rest at night? No, well, I have to help mommy sell provisions down the ground, over the road. That in itself, in the essence, is child labor. And so to bring awareness to what young people go through throughout the world, especially in Latin America, where they have to help their family earn an income, they do so at the risk of these children either losing hand, limb, or life, or picking up an occupational disease. And so this year's theme is to bring awareness that children between the ages of 12 to 24, their lives are valued and protected, and so hence the theme for this year.
Generation safe and healthy. Good. Now, the May 1st is celebrated globally as International Labor Day. Could you tell us something about this day?
It is a day where throughout the international labor, in collaboration with the International Trade Union Movement, the International Workers Organization, as well as the International Social Security Movement, as well as the European Union and other entities join together to bring awareness to workers. Workers are important. Workers are the backbone to any economy. If you don't have workers, how will your economy prosper and thrive?
Yes.
And so it is a day set aside to show all that workers are important and that you need to effectively bring about whatever change necessary to ensure that workers throughout the world have decent work. Mm-hmm. They have decent pay, safe working conditions, and that they are numerated according to their skill sets, and that they have benefits that they not only can utilize for self, but it flows into the family.
Yes.
And so the family prosper, the community thrive, and the nation economy continues to grow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Now, the Ministry of Labor is expected to have an upcoming national consultation. What are some of the key issues to be discussed at this consultation, and why a consultation at this time?
The consultation in itself, it's actually on OSH, creating an occupation safety and health policy. It brings stakeholders together for discussion to look at, for the first time, proposing a formal policy that will address occupational safety and health issues in the workplace, the process through which they will be addressed, how we will manage this particular issue in the workplace, because each workplace has different set of challenges, but there will be things that will be basic to all or common to all.
Yes.
And so a lot of work has been done over a number of years in terms of addressing this matter, but we are looking at providing legislative framework now, and to ensure that there is compliance to it. That is not just a matter of whether or not persons want to, because if we're going to be celebrating and recognizing things like World Day of Health and Safety,
yes,
also Labor Day annually, we must move from talk into action to ensure that through legislation we can secure the rights of individuals, that we can ensure that an environment exists to support what it is that we've been saying and what are the best practices. And so it provides for stakeholders to come together with the Department of Labor that will be facilitating it, to have that discussion and begin on the formulation of that. It will also feed into what we are actually about in terms of the new labor code. The new labor code seeks to consolidate our existing laws in terms of labor legislation and to deal with those areas where we need to make improvements and adjustments to ensure that there's a legislative framework that supports what we are trying to do now and the change in economies that we have, the change in realities in the labor administration throughout the entire island. And so it is all part and parcel of the overall effort to improve the labor environment in St. Kitts and ensure that we can support both employers and workers to ensure that we can improve our economic situation and best practices in the workplaces.
Sure. Now, the International Labour Organization has a handbook for joint safety and health committees in the English-speaking Caribbean. How familiar are the people at the department with this?
I let the Labour Commission speak specifically to the department, but our training is ongoing. While the OSH team and the head for this particular unit, Mr. Brown, has just benefited from training overseas, I think it was Geneva?
In Italy.
In Italy. He had the opportunity to go there and to get first-hand best practices, look at what ought to be done in a unit of this, because we've actually reorganized the Labour Department. Efforts began late last year in terms of the reorganizing and restructuring the Labour Department so we can better support the type of and create the kind of environment that we like to see in the place of work. And so part of that process has been training. Later again this year, and not even so much later, but in the next couple of weeks, there'll be training again facilitated by ILO. So currently there is guide for the Department of Labor in terms of the handling and how inspections are done, occupational health and safety issues that they will share with the employers and workers alike, because it is a dual responsibility. It is not just the role of employees, but employers as well, right? So all stakeholders must be involved in ensuring that there is safety at work. And so the department has been empowered in that way, not only through training, but we have dramatically increased the numbers of the department throughout, and the inspection in particular, and ensure that we provide them with the resources so that they can increase their presence in the workplaces, because presence also helps as a deterrent to non-compliance in certain issues. And so the imperative has been dramatically increased, the numbers in terms of the inspectors, and we continue to train them so that we can position them to ensure that the type of environment is created with there is safety in the workplace. And they will also speak of other areas of checks that they're doing. But in terms of the actual handbook, I'll let the commissioner speak further, but there is training provided and we continue.
I'm aware of the book, being the former International Labour Organization desk officer, and numerous training I would have had with the ILO. I was privy to the book. I have a copy. However, I have not drawn from it recently because I tend to get more information through the ILO specialist who resides in Trinidad. It's easier for me to call Mr. Pino, ask him questions in relation to a number of the OSH policies and OSH manuals. However, I must say that even though I am aware of the book, I have seen it, I've gone through it, I tend to take the easy route. I call.
And even in a manual like that, some things may not be applicable, so you have to make it culturally sensitive to our operation, and look at also not just what is in that particular publication, but what happens, what are the realities on the ground as they visit workplace to workplace. Then they also get an idea of what the challenges are, emerging and new challenges, and how to address them. The idea is more through a collaborative approach with the inspector and the employer and the worker, rather than a sort of militant policing of the laws or policies, so that we can work together to correct some of the anomalies that exist in the workplace in this particular issue, and we can advance the agenda in terms of ensuring safety and health.
Now, what is the role of the ILO in relation to labor departments in countries worldwide, and how do they collaborate with each other?
The ILO is an United Nations specialized agency dealing with labor. St. Kitts and Nevis joined the ILO in 1996, And the ILO, through its main body, the International Labour Conference, which takes place in 2 weeks, is to design international labour standards, which we in all the member states have the opportunity to either review, be part of the making of these international standards in working committees,
Yes.
and the passing of these standards at the ILC. But our role is basically to adopt these standards through ratification of the conventions, recommendations, and protocol. Once we ratify any of these particular instruments, we now have the right to take these pieces of instrument and make it law. Or where our law falls short, we then seek to bring our law to fall in line with the standards that we would have created based on our participation in formulating these standards. And once we would have ratified them, we would have put the law in place. We carry out in application these standards. And so every year, as part of the ILO, we are expected to report to a specialized body of the ILO called the Committee of Experts on the recommendation and application of conventions and recommendation. And so we report to them annually on what we are doing here in St. Kitts and Nevis in respect to these conventions we would have ratified. We have ratified to the 10 convention of 188 convention.
How
And
many?
188. Person will say, why?
And you've ratified how many?
8.
8 of
Well-
100 and...
88.
Okay.
Some are applicable to us.
Oh, I
Some are not applicable to us. However, the important thing out of that 8 convention, we have ratified the most important ones, which are the core convention that deals with freedom of association, that deals with the equal opportunity in employment, child labor, and forced labor. Under each of those areas, there are 2 conventions each, and we have ratified these conventions as ILO in their pillars. Consider these 4 areas to be effective in formulating decent work for all workers. So we have ratified the fundamental. There are countries throughout the world, for example, the United States, who have only ratified 2 of the core or fundamental convention. We have ratified all. And we have also ratified Convention 144, which is a governance convention, which is designed to help you govern your system of labor administration, which is 144, which is tripartite consultation. Because the ILO is about a lot of social dialogue and coming together as a tripartite unit to ensure the rights and protection of workers are continuous. We have also ratified a technical convention, which is very important to us. We are ship registry, and we have ratified the Maritime Labor Convention. Our ports are filled with boats load of tourists, but it's also a boat filled with workers. We have ships flying St. Kitts and Nevis flags, and these have workers on it. And we as a country who have a flag registry are expected to look out for the rights and the protection of these seafarers who work on sea daily. And so we have ratified this very piece of instrument that takes care of their terms and conditions of employment. It takes care of their wages, and it also takes care of their social security, because if they work on a particular ship and they're from the Seychelles, but the ship is registered to St. Kitts and Nevis, that whatever is on our social security books, it must be adhered to by the owner of that ship. So it means that the monies which they were contributed to social security will follow them when they go back to the Seychelles. It's also important because if they get sick, the convention says the ship owner has to repatriate them back home. If they die on work, they must be compensated. So it is not how much you ratified, it is important types of instruments that are ratified that why we have only 8. And it's very difficult when you ratify the instrument to make sure that you put in place the necessary groundwork, legislation, and means for applying these conventions before you do so. Because if you don't, you can get blacklisted by the ILO. And so whenever we seek to look at the convention, to ratify it, we look at the importance of this convention to St. Kitts and Nevis. Not because it's on the book and we should ratify it, but how it will effectively work for our Twin Island Federation.
In addition, as part of the process of reviewing our legislation and so on, we have also begun the process of revisiting those conventions that have not been ratified to see where we go from there with them in terms of getting assistance from ILO to see how we can provide further strength to our labor administration, labor environment, even in getting assistance from ILO to see how we can provide further strength to our labor administration, labor environment, so whether through ratifying them or through providing other means of support. In addition, you also asked about the ILO work with the department, but ILO does not just work with the department as a government, but also with, we spoke of tripartism, which exists formally through legislation, and we have formalized the National Tripartite Committee in the latter part of last year as well, and they have been working very well. In fact, there is a regular meeting of the National Tripartite Committee working very hard on trying to get the new labor code in place, which will, consultancy with that will begin this month. The new month has started, so it begins this month, and we'll advise the general public with more information about that. But the ILO also work directly with unions, workers, and also with employers. So not just with the government labor administration in terms of the Labor Department, the Ministry of Labor, but also they work directly with the unions to ensure that they provide the support and the strength to workers, and also with the employers, because any decision that is made unilaterally by anyone will have a spiraling effect throughout the entire system. And so it is more, as the commissioner said, a collaborative approach to make sure none of the links are weak, but that they are strong.
Now, speaking about occupational safety and health, your department has had to take the lead on this recently. With issues at the department. How did you go about this?
Okay, let me speak to that issue. Well, we hope that the model that we use, which was also applauded by the National Tripartite Body, as we were very transparent in terms of what we were doing to address that, because any area of work, wherever humans are, you're going to have situations, you're going to have challenges. You have to constantly maintain and ensure that the environment is conducive to health and so on. There would have been a few reports that would have been submitted, and the department somehow seems to have had a history of that, having moved from New Street, where there were a number of complaints, they would have done their test and so on, and they moved to John Gum's building. And then in my time, we suddenly moved to a new area. I think the challenge is there. We followed established protocol in terms of how we address that, because what we would require of ourselves and what we have done, we ask employers to do the same thing. You need the scientific evidence. You need to ensure at the same time also that you hear what the human element is suggesting to us. And even though the test suggested to us that there no need for any further remediation, we listened to what was being said, because at the end of the day, if there is not work being done, if the employees are not being productive, then you're wasting time. And then we are holding the flag for us. And so we took a decision, let us relocate then and move into a new area However, we continue to just, the area actually is still being used, still being occupied by another area, and there are no reports. But we are not about that, about ensuring that we have moved so we can, because we had a very strong program for this year, and it has kicked off well. We have one or two concerns. We hope that by providing training and so on, that we can get workers moving into that direction. It has really been energized, the Department of Labor, energized to the point that persons are calling for the first time. They are seeing this new level of energy and so on. And even though we have had some of the old staff working, I don't want to call the commissioner too old, but the commission has been around for a very, very long time. That is obvious in her presentation. All of the units she have working, particularly as the desk officer of the ILO. And Mr. Brown has been doing a tremendous job in ensuring that the presence is strong in the areas of work. So we follow the established protocols in terms of what we would expect any employer to do, and to do the necessary research and make decisions. Sometimes at the end of it, you may not find what you're looking for, but then you just have to make a decision anyway and move on. And I think we've moved past that. But one of the issues that continue, we're moving not just into that area, but we are looking at how throughout government, we'll need to begin to look at the issue of maintenance. Something has been spoken of a long time. But now with this USH policy, we expect that by the completion of the entire process, that even government will be affected, that we do not wait until we hear of a situation. Something new in our federation is aircon. Everybody wants aircon in the office, but aircon comes with a different type of management issues and so on. Some of the buildings were not constructed with this in mind, and they are created, everybody wants the comfort of that, but if the building was not constructed with that in mind, you now have to make structural changes and decisions that will promote the long use of that throughout the day and so on. The best way really is to keep your windows open and work without it. But our realities are we have to modernize, right? Even with new technology and so on, a lot of our buildings were not constructed for these type of technology, right? And we making changes to accommodate them, it can also create problems on individuals' health. So there has to be a serious study as to where we are right now when we are moving into these areas of changes, when we are seeking to ensure that we remain relevant and we use all the new technologies, that we must consider the impact also of those. And so the USH policy will be, that consultation, we hope will bring out those key areas. But we believe that we would have acted in good faith in looking at the research and making decisions, and even after that, we made a decision, hey, it's time to move on, so that the department can again settle and we can move on.
Now, in facilitating occupational safety and health, what are some of the partners with which you work?
For example, the Ministry of Health will be definitely a partner in which we work, Social Security, Fire and Rescue, and that's another issue. Again, we look at how our buildings are being constructed. Sometimes we make changes to accommodate persons, to accommodate new areas, extend and so on. And if a fire breaks out, what happens then? How do we get out when you only have one door, right? And not only if a fire breaks out, but sometimes you have issues of violence that will break out in the workplace. And so we have to, employers, workers, government have to really sit down and look at it. And the USH policy provides an opportunity. How now we bring on board all our stakeholders and look at what is needed now in order for us to address that. We've made changes and we may not have made provision for this area of USH. We now have to look seriously at how we would have to do that.
Anything to add, Mr. James?
In terms of the partnership, the Department of Labor works in collaboration with a number of government units. We utilize the Bureau of Standards because our officers don't have that skill set or the technology to use, so we utilize the Bureau of Standards a lot. We recommend to employers the Bureau of Standards. We fire and safety, we bring this fire and safety on board. When we go into inspection and we realize that this is beyond our scope, we call in the necessary fire rescue, Social Security, we call in the Ministry of Health, we call in Immigration and National Security, because as I said, inspections is not just an OSH inspection, you have the social side to an inspection. And one of it is looking at workers, whether you're documented or not documented. And so we don't have certain capacities under our law to exercise a number of the things that we would like to do, so we have to partner with other agencies in government as well as the employers and the workers to ensure that whatever we are doing, it is not just pulling apart, but it is coming to a consensus with everyone.
Now, speaking about inspections, it is my understanding that the department is on a mission to boost inspections. Mr. Brown,
Yes,
maybe
sir.
you can speak a little bit to that mission of the department to boost inspections, and tell us a little bit more in terms of what the inspections consist of.
I've been at Labour Department for at least this will make 9 years, right? When we first started out, we had some challenges in terms of getting to the business place and back. So with the PS on board, Mr. Collins and Miss James, they provided me with a bus, right? So since we got the bus, we didn't have a issue in terms of getting to and from the employers. So the numbers last year were very small in starting out. But in the latter part of last year, numbers increased drastically. In the last quarter, actually, we did over 100, close to 200 inspections. And so far for the year, we have exceeded 150 plus
You have exceeded all that you did last year.
already in such a short time. Also, we had the manpower increase in terms of how many persons are on the unit. Now we have a total of 10, including myself. So the plan going forward, we're actually looking at dividing the group, the team, in like sets of 3. Well, I'm behind the desk now, basically. So I stay in the office, and I would assign each individual to do specific tasks. Some would do follow-ups, some would do inspections, and some would do probably accidents, right? In terms of what we look for, we do 2 types of inspections. We do a OSH, Occupational Safety and Health Inspection, and we do a social inspection. Now with the OSH inspection, we look at basically the conditions of the place, the workplace. When we go in, we look for exit signs. We look to see if they have wet floor signs, if they have emergency numbers posted, if they have proper lighting, proper ventilation, you know. After looking at these few stuff, we then write a letter to the employer stating, okay, these are our findings. We're going to give you roughly 6 weeks to fix the issue. Now, we don't intend to come across harsh to the employers, right? But we want to create a dialogue with the employer, right? In the event that you have some shortcomings or some issues, fixing these small issues, we can give you time, you know? Some of the issues we have too is that they would have issues of getting, for example, fire extinguishers. We tell them what kind of supply have, and well, recently they ran out of a lot, right? They ran out. So we have been working with them closely, letting them know that it's just recently, yesterday, we spoke to them and told them that we have at least maybe 50 to 80 more to come to them. And I'm probably going to need to order some more extinguishers. And from the social aspect of the inspection, we ask for stuff like minimum wage. If workers are being paid correctly in terms of overtime, is it calculated correctly? We have issues where incorrect figures are being reported to Social Security, right, which is another major issue that we are challenging. Okay? I would say that's about it. In a
Okay.
nutshell.
They also look at things like air quality,
Right.
ventilation. If you, for example, if you go into a restaurant, all the workers have on the proper safety gear. They have, for example, you're chopping, and do you have on the correct wizard glove to ensure that as you're chopping, you don't chop your fingers off?
Right.
Are the machine guarded to ensure that the worker does not harm him or herself? And so we look at all these things to ensure that the workplace as a whole is safe.
Right.
And not only does it safe, that it is safe to work in. The new trend in occupational safety and health is the psychosocial hazards.
Yes.
It has to do with ergonomics. Is your chair appropriate for long sittings
Based on your height and weight.
based on your weight, your height? Is there proper padding for your hands as you use, a secretary may use her computer or typewriter for an extended period of time so that they don't develop carpal
Yes,
tunnel or
right.
tendonitis.
Or if
You
you're
look at the light
standing.
instructions so they don't, their eyes are properly guarded from any sort of flying debris. We also look at if a worker is standing for too long, how does it affect their posture, their back? Are there necessary seating or intervals in which a worker can stop to rest so that at the end of the day they don't go home fatigued? We look at all these stress. A couple years ago, the ILO World Day for Safety and Health looked at stress,
Yeah.
which is a major psychosocial
Yes.
hazard facing many workers today in the world of work.
I think the inspection is, in and of itself, a spotlight on the area of work, because there are things that the employee may not see, the employer may not see or recognize, and the inspection provides that light on it.
Right.
And through collaboration, they can address it. The idea is prevention rather than that just a reaction to something that may have occurred, an accident that sometimes we wait until accident occurs
To fix.
before we actually begin to fix things. When things that I said earlier, it was not just the responsibility of the employer but also of the worker, because sometimes workers become so experienced that you take a chance and not use the protective gear that you ought to be using. It's just a quick thing, you're trying to cut a piece of board and you do not, and then just when you take the chance is just when something happens.
Yes.
And so there has to also be dialogue, communication with the workers, that we must follow the rules, the guidelines,
Employers.
safety guidelines on a daily basis. There must be consistency. When there is a lack of consistency, sometimes, for World Day of Health and Safety, we are all aware of what can happen, and we become very much prone to prevent things. So we're doing things and ensuring things are lined up. But by the time the day fades, by the time the month fades, then persons are back into, then we have opportunities for accidents and so on to occur.
Right.
I think it was a Calypso that says, accidents, my friend, will occur, Socrates, but we multiply the danger, right? When we are not being consistent in terms of observing certain rules and procedures.
In fact, in his 2013 message for World Day for Safety and Health at work, Guy Ryder, who is the ILO Director General, said that to move forward, it is necessary to close the data gap because knowledge is the key to prevention.
It is.
And that's what the inspection does.
Right. So part of your work is to provide that knowledge in the workplace in terms of how to keep safe
Yes.
and healthy through these means of
And one of the things, component of our inspection, is dialoguing with the workers. And from that, you get ideas of what may be or may not be. And so that's a useful tool, because the worker can say, we don't have X, we don't have Y. And it gives the Department of Labor the opportunity to one-on-one talk with the employees and get another feeling, because the employer will give you one, but the workers will give you, and this is where we balance it out by dialoguing with the employer and dialoguing with the workers.
now. All that you're saying sounds very good, but of course you have to have an enforcer, and the Labor Department is an enforcer. Of course, we know if there is no enforcer, people will get away with murder,
Yes.
right? And so how are you enforcing the labor legislation? How is the department enforcing the labor legislation?
A major is inspection. The inspection is designed is not only to ensure safety and health in the workplace, but to ensure that employers follow the laws.
Yep.
And if they don't, then there are consequences to all of it. Some employers genuinely are not aware of certain laws. And so this is where the Department of Labor, in carrying out inspection, seek to bring to the attention the employers of all the necessary laws and to see if they're in compliance with these laws. Are you paying the minimum wage? Do you know what is minimum wage? Do you know a worker is entitled to 14 days vacation minimum annually? How do you calculate overtime? Do you know that overtime is voluntary? Are you working a worker beyond the necessary hours that the law require? We get this from the employer, we get this from the worker. And in doing these routine inspection, we are informing and educating the employers and the workers of their right, but also their responsibility. And if you don't, the Labor Department, then we work with them, allowing them to correct the infractions. And if you don't, then there are penalties and fines under the law, which the Labor Department has been given certain powers to do to ensure that employers carry out what is expected of them under the law.
People will always cheat the system.
Of course.
Let's face it. Do you think that the Labor Department is being vigilant enough? Because sometimes you get the impression that there are numerous employers who are cheating the system. You have undocumented workers who are working and so on. And of course, these undocumented workers are open to abuse and all of this sort of a thing. They don't have the papers and all of that. They really shouldn't be working.
They should not be working. But when we come across this through inspection or something is said to us and we carry out our investigation and we find out that these workers are undocumented, we consult with the Ministry of National Security. We have a MOU with them that when we find this is happening, we call them, especially immigration, because labor does not have the enforcement law to remove them from the workplace. Immigration does. So the memorandum of understanding is that we involve the Ministry of National Security and Immigration to ensure that these workers are picked up and removed from the job, and if certain be, to have them reported back to where they came from. But sometimes we do work with them to ensure that they get the necessary documentation if there's a genuine need for them in the workforce. One of the things that we do with the Ministry of National Security is that whenever a worker or employer applies for a work permit, the Ministry of National Security will allow us to review the contract to ensure that the contract meets the spirit of our law. Because many times you'll have an employer from overseas who would say, okay, then the minimum wage is $8, so I'm going to pay you $8. Our job is to ensure that if the worker is coming into St. Kitts and Nevis, that worker be paid according to the laws of St. Kitts and Nevis. Just recently we had an issue of that. The contract was signed overseas. The worker came in and the worker was found to be working on the standards of another country. The Labor Department immediately got involved and remedied the situation. A couple years ago, we went to a work site and all of the workers were undocumented except for 4 locals. We proceeded to, in this instance, we walked with the Ministry of National Security, who put a stop order, and then work with the employer thereafter to ensure that if they are going to remain here, because it was an industry that was new to us, Our workers did not have the necessary skill set, so we work with them to ensure that they got the necessary documentation to continue to provide the service that they were offering.
You wanted to say something?
Yes, that issue of undocumented workers and the arrangement breaches of the law in the workplace. Now, whether the individual is documented or not, the law is the law. And so that is the only status that is under consideration. That first and foremost, you are in breach of the law. This is what the legislation suggests in terms of holiday pay, in terms of minimum pay, and so on. Then you are required to do that, whether it's documented or not. It's just that sometimes in persons' desperation, and if they do not have the legal papers that require them to work and to live in St. Kitts, they sometimes make arrangements with employers that usually blow up. And when it explodes, then the Labor Department now have to deal with the mess in getting that rectified. And they have been vigilant in doing that. We encourage persons that if they are aware of certain situations, they should report it to the Department of Labor, so the Department of Labor can provide the necessary intervention to correct the anomalies that exist in those areas. She spoke of the relationship with the national security. Even persons, employers who are setting up business and they seek work permit, then they are required to go to the Department of Labor to advertise for a period of time. And if they are not able to find persons, then they can look on the outside. Of course, we are now policing that as well to ensure that our people are given a fair shake of things when they come here. In certain areas, we have had those reports where persons have come in and they may not have gone through the system properly, and as a result, it has robbed our people of the opportunity. So those are things that we are seeking to correct in contractual arrangements that do not conform with the law. Whatever contracts lawyers and businessmen with among themselves to a worker, if it is in contravention of the law, then it cannot stand. The law will supersede that. And so that is also an area of concern. The work of the department is great. We have reorganized. We will continue to train, have persons specialize in certain areas so that we can address not only the breaches of law, but looking at the changing in environment. One of the major issues for the Department of Labor, and one for us, and when you speak to it, is the area where we have increased dramatically in terms of helping persons find employment. Youth, the theme this year about youth in terms of occupational health and safety. They are vulnerable, they are at risk, but we are also from the Department of Labor and the Ministry seeking to ensure that we can provide employment opportunities for our young people. And again, the department would have benefited from training, from looking at best practices in the Caribbean and in the United States, and coming up with programs that are culturally relevant and appropriate to St. Kitts so that we can help our young people. We have begun the process of implementing some of them and seeking to ensure that our employment unit do better in terms of helping persons placed in jobs.
What are some of the challenges that the department has in enforcing the labor laws? What have been some of the challenges?
One of our major challenges is that we're working with antiquated laws. We're working with laws that...
Maybe you need to break down that word, what it means, antiquated.
We are working with laws that were enacted in 1948, 1960, 1966, and is not relevant to the changing world of work. And we realize that in order for us to effectively do what we have to do, legislative reform is key to the Department of Labor carrying out its major role and function. And so, as I said, we're looking at a draft labor code. We have been working with it for some time now, but we have to, nothing good comes easy. And so in order for us to effectively have a code that best suits us, we have to do a lot of work. And so we are still working on producing the code, and we are going to have that code by the end of the year. A lot of the penalties under the book are small. So it will not, $100, employer would say, man, I pay that there. We need the stiffer fines under the law, like $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 work stop order, that will bring them to the understanding that, hey, the Department of Labor means no joke. But the Department of Labor has a unique situation where we don't want to be antagonistic to either side because the world of work will not effectively work that way. So we have to work, coaching, leading with both the employer and both the employees to ensure that at the end of the day, whatever is done that will not just benefit one over the other, but benefit all, because at the end of the day, St. Kitts and Nevis is the one who come out on top. And so, a major challenge. We have been over the time in working on a number of projects and within the system to ensure that the challenges that we were facing no longer seems to be a major challenge for us. For example, the reforming of the Department of Labor. Before, you had a structure where you had a labor commissioner, deputy, labor officers, and everybody were jack of all trades and master of none, and then a few clerks. The Department of Labor, through an audit that was done several years ago, sought to look at the recommendation that the ILO made in terms of reforming. So we have broken it down into the sectors. We have increased the manpower to effectively carry out our jobs, so that you don't have one area that is getting all the attention and the other is not. We now have 5 units that effectively work to ensure that whatever we do it to the best of our abilities. And so over the last couple of years, we have worked to iron out some of our challenges. We still face the hurdle of legislative reform, and that is on stream.
I think that's a plus for us in terms of what the Commission outlined, that the necessary resource and support has been provided so the department can do its work. And this year we promise to deliver that new labor code. We have advanced the process from the latter part of last year, where we decided we have had the discussions long enough. There comes a time when we say, listen, it's time to say the benediction and move on. And we have basically said the benediction over that, and we are ready. There has been a very good relationship through the tripartite movement to ensure that we're able to deliver a good labor code for our people going forward. But yes, the support will continue. We will seek to increase that because we want the department to function to support the workers and employers at work.
What is the process when a worker feels that somehow their right
Have been infringed.
has been infringed? What is the process? Because I've come across a few persons,
Might be
and
frustrated.
I'm speaking for them, who are frustrated and who somehow feel that, it's probably not beneficial to them even going to the Labor Department, because their matter somehow does not get addressed.
If you are experiencing an issue, a problem, and you are of the opinion or you feel that in coming to the Department of Labor may somehow jeopardize your job, there are ways in which the Department of Labor seek to gather the information. For example, it could be you're working in a particular factory, and the product in which the factory produce carries odor, exhaust system, enough ventilation is not there, and you're coming down sick, and you feel that, should I go to the Department of Labor? You can come in, because the Department of Labor officers took an oath to keep everything confidential. That's the first thing scheduled in the Labor Act, that you must, before you touch anything in the Labor Department, you swear an oath of secrecy. And so you can come into the Department of Labor and read through our skills will seek to get the information necessary. It could be simple inspection, whereby you go in and you do a random inspection, you get the information, and you speak to the employer about it. Okay, then we recognize it. You don't have no vent. You need to put in the necessary venting, etc. In that case, the employer is of no, would not have known
Yes.
that it was a complaint that came to the Department of Labor, and in so doing we have protected the worker, we have protected other employees, and we protected the employer as well.
I think your question may have come from concerns that have been out there for some
Yes,
time,
yes,
right?
yes.
And we're not running from the issue anyway, because we've heard that over the years. Some persons may have had the concern that their matter may not have been addressed in a timely manner. It remains unresolved, or they are not satisfied with the outcome. And we have had a part of the reorganizing and the restructuring of the department and training, organizing in units and so on. There's a greater level of transparency in terms of the management of cases that must be well documented. There is a redress system, so even though the officer might be dealing with a matter, it can advance as far as up to the ministry, where the minister can provide hearing and so on, and further intervention if persons are not satisfied or if matters are not resolved. We sometimes get the legal department involved in terms of bringing matters to some form of resolution. Yes, we've had the concern that over the years some persons have been concerned with the timely or the lack of timeliness in which matters were resolved. We have addressed those. So we want to encourage persons. You can trust the department. We have reorganized, we have restructured to ensure that we address your matter. I've had persons who would come when they have not heard from the department, and even that we have addressed to ensure that we call and we keep you updated where your matter is at. We may not always come, that is the department, reach to a point of resolution that the employee will always be pleased with. But at the end of the process, the department promises to have your matter resolved as best as possible, to share with you where we are in the matter. There's a better system of managing cases and documenting the cases so that we can easily review. When it reaches the commission, it comes to the ministry, we can easily review where we are at, what has happened, and where we need to go from there. So I think that has been improved a lot in terms of the department. Of course, persons have come back with cases like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I know that as a result it has caused some backloading for the department, where they've had to go back and try to bring those matters up and seek to ensure that they are resolved. But the system is far better now.
Good. We have to go to the phone lines. I'm sure there are some people, just waiting to call. The overseas number, we are going to open the lines. 1-718-577-2916. That is 1-718-577-2916. And the local number is 465-2555. We welcome your call. Working for you, good afternoon. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Letroy.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to your panelists there. Charles Brown here. Good afternoon to the listeners home and abroad. Guys, I listen in and I hear you guys say you go out into the field and to the businesses and so. Question, do you all go to the government departments? Because when you're talking about the work, the protective way of the work, I myself is a government worker and I have been to many government departments where workers don't have any special arrangement by a doctor, but you see workers in government offices in joggers, what we call flappers. And that just is not where when they come in, they take off the clothes of shoes and wear that. After 4 minutes to 4, they're going home in the same thing. They come into work at morning in the same joggers or clappers or flappers. The other thing is, do you visit sites that the government give out for projects and contracts and so, because many of those sites, you see people in the same clappers, joggers, and this is on construction site where big, heavy equipment is working, lots of construction, heavy debris. They don't have on hat, they don't have on the jacket, they're not working with any workman gloves, and they got on slappers or clappers, and sometimes they're walking on the site barefoot. Government project. The other thing is, you say you guys does investigate and document things. Now, let me ask another question. If I am not satisfied with the Labor Department addressing my matter, and I take my matter to a lawyer and to the court, can my lawyer get a copy of what you have documented, say some form of copy or statement to take to court? Because you would have been working on behalf of my complaint, and if I don't feel that my complaint was addressed properly, I have the right to take the matter to court. And I think my lawyer should get a copy to see how far or you have investigated the matter or dealt with the matter. Go on, guys.
Okay, thank you.
In respect to the first two questions involving government, yes, we do inspect government workplaces. We have just commenced that phase. We have gone through a number of government institutions, inspect them, and we have made recommendation in terms to the necessary PPEs that are expected of workers on a construction site, even construction sites that are government projects. The same recommendations that are made for private company is made for a government. So if there are no fire extinguishers, we recommend. If there are issues with air quality, we recommend that the brewery be bought in. If there are issues in regards to improper seating, lighting, sanitation, we do. What is done for the private sector is also done in respect to government offices and work sites. Now, if a worker bring his or her matter to the Department of Labor and is not satisfied with how it was dealt at the Department of Labor, there are ways of grievance handling in which he can go to. For example, if he's not satisfied with the decision made by a labor officer and he comes to the commissioner, and the commissioner would have investigated the matter and is satisfied that the work done by the officer within the remit of the law, and make a decision, and that worker is not satisfied still, him or her still have an opportunity to go further. They can go to the minister, who can involve an independent hearing officer or arbitration, and if they're still not satisfied with the ruling of the arbiter, they can go to a court of law. Now, information that would have been gathered at the Department of Labor, we just don't give you back out unless there is a written request by the lawyer. And if the lawyer requests, we still send that request to the legal so they can see if there are any issues that can be liable against government, and so we send it. But we do pass information out to employees, but it has to be a written request coming from the lawyer. Many times the court will ask us as well, because the person might not have had a lawyer, but they have proceeded with their industrial matter to the court, and the magistrate will send to us at the Department of Labor and ask for the necessary information, which we will hand over. We do not keep it tight-fisted, or we share the information, but it has to be done according to the proper protocol and guidelines set down, so that at the end of the day, the matter can resolve amicably.
Now, the Director General of the ILO said that decent work can lift whole communities out of poverty and underpins human security and social peace. It is not just a goal, it is a driver of sustainable development. Now, I know that the United Nations has its 2030 agenda. Caller on the line. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. William.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to your guests. It's amazing to me that you all is speaking about the labor laws.
Yes.
And we would like to know why is it that there is not somebody from the 6th Nevis and Trade Labor Union is not there with you all to outline some of the laws that govern to the people in the federation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would like to know from you all too, does you all send out people on training, like to overseas, to know exactly about the ILO and different categories?
Okay.
Because I would really like to know exactly how about where we go from the labor union to the labor commission office. It is not we have to go to the labor union first. If we do not get no justice, we come to you all. So you all work now as a body of two in one. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So I will listen off here.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Working for all of us, that's why.
Yes, sir.
That's why I want to congratulate the hard working Labour Department because see them vigilant down on the port.
Yes.
Because it's too much a gangster business going on down there. Why Asian people feel like they're smarter than we small island people? Eh? And it's working. I want to let the commissioner know, you know, that the National Security Office is not supposed to issue no permit to no Asian people to come here to do no work, and they bring them in before. When that's approved, they bring them. It's too much nonsense going on down there. And Petty got to hold accountable for that. He's not supposed to issue no license like that. It's too much in there down there in stores and with people them can't get work. I talk to the honorable minister about it. And you all got to speedily get a task force and deal with what's going on. And come and talk to people who in the know. Because this is my country. And I don't get between them and I will police them. Because this country got making money. You understand what I'm saying? It's too much nonsense going on down there with work permit. They're bringing them in and they're placing them in stores doing work and with people can't get a job. When I leave you, let us go up the face and me. Because me born here. Me not got enough food to go. And right here, me gonna stay till when it's time for pretty flowers and board box. Have a good day, that's why.
Okay,
work
sir.
for all of us.
All right.
I like to differentiate between what a trade union would do in respect to what
The purpose of trade unions. What's
a union work for its membership to ensure that they achieve the maximum benefits they can in respect for their membership. They have shop stewards who will be within these employment who are there on the ground that look out for their workers. If their members have an issue, they go to the shop steward, the union rep, who will go to management and have bipartite dialogue in respect to that. Now, if the union and the worker and the employers cannot seem to come to an agreement, the Labor Department is called in to mediate, to ensure that at the end of the day, using the skill sets that we have, as well as the law, seem to come to an amicable solution. The Department of Labor is neither for or against. The Department of Labor is the between both management and workers, and we work using laws, not our own opinion, how we feel or sentiment. At the end of the day, we have to be guided by law to effectively ensure that when we mediate, that at the end of the day, the law prevails. Not our own opinion, not that we favor an employer or we favor employees. At the end of the day, that the law prevails. With respect to training, the ILO offers training, and we can have training where an expert comes in to the country and will do training not only just for staff but tripartite constituents, the workers and employers as well. Or they may do training for the Department of Labor staff, they may do training for the union, they may do training for the employers. Or they may offer fellowship through the International Training Center in Turin, which is like their university, and they would offer fellowship to the Department of Labor, to union, to employers, to other government stakeholders in the world of work. Training necessary. So training is not basically for government workers alone. The training that is offered is for tripartite constituent, workers, employers, and government.
Before the callers, I was asking about the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030 agenda with respect to labor. Could you tell us what some of those are? There's a call. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leroy.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon, the people from Labor Department.
Good afternoon.
Now, my question is this. I want to support Jamdong and Frederick, because I want to know if when Labor Department going out on the job site, if they don't go with the immigration. Because right over there in Port Zante, you got people just come in and plane last night and they done in behind counter stand up and work. How they get that dope? How they get work permit? And local people here can't get no work over there, so when they go look work, they tell them nothing there. But when next day you see them straight here people over there. Well, I want Labor Department to go over there and check out that. And when you're going on the job site, go with immigration. Because you know the people just rushing here, not got the proper document and them a work. They are in the country illegal. Thank you very much.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. William. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to the good people them there from the Labor Department.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, my question to you all. How often you all go out and job sites and check whether those people who come in and get in work from different countries, whether they're coming in illegal, or they're getting a job, or they're not paying the work, they don't have no work permit or anything. Because many people complain from here that these people come in and they're paying them under minimum wage. And because they're paying them under minimum wage, they don't want to hire the local. And that is not fair. And the next thing again, coming down to Ross University there now, where the train going go layer, I think this is a hotel there. Right now, I ain't seen a local on that site. I see some training man there putting up some small, like hut and so. Maybe took it that where they want to storeroom and them things. I want to know that if these training developers, if they don't bring their own people them into work and left out we got so much trade man here in this country. I want to know if they're going to bring the people into work and left out our trade man. Because we got a lot of trade man here, and in the past, I see some frigate best, I see some trying to build some condos over there, and up to now, some of them unfinished. They don't even think it. Down Sunny Point, I see it happen down Sunny Point too. Since the farmer government, they're building something down there, and up to now, they didn't finish yet. So I want to know how much we local people can benefit from these projects we're going to put down right now, our local workers. Anyway, I'll continue to listen up here.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think that those were our last calls. We have to start wrapping up this program. I will give the Labour Commission an opportunity and the rest of the panel to respond to some of your concerns.
There were a few callers who referred to the issues of undocumented workers and in a particular area. Yes, we have become more vigilant in our inspection by the Labour Department to ensure that we correct any irregularities in this area. There are persons who may have information, because sometimes people can set stage for when the department makes an inspection, and by the end of the week the reality comes to fruition and you actually see it playing out. But we would want to ensure that through inspection that we remain consistent and vigilant, and look at what is actually happening in these areas as far as undocumented workers and ensuring that our people can get a fair shake. There are agreements that are signed with government, and we are looking at those as they become available to us to ensure that employers, investors keep their end of the bargain as far as employment of our people is concerned. So yes, that we are becoming more vigilant in that area, and there is a working relationship with all unions. The Labour Department alluded to that. Through the tripartite organization, we also have a new union that has been formed. I think is the United Workers Union. We have met with them. We have provided them, we promised them the necessary support and so on to ensure that we can work together to improve the labor environment in St. Kitts and Nevis. But the concern that I expressed through inspection, yes, there is a great need to increase what we are doing and to better enable the inspectors to perform and ensure that we can discover all these irregularities and correct them. And we will not be daunted in our efforts to do that. We can promise persons that the department will continue its inspection, will continue to look at these concerns, will continue to dialogue with the necessary agencies, other stakeholders, immigration, national security. What I was saying in regard to national security, I know of late national security have been working with us, where we have had to freeze persons' requests for the work permits and so on when there have been concerns in the workplaces. They have partnered with us to ensure that is done, where we have had to address areas of concern where persons want to bring persons into the country, and they have liaised with us to ensure that the necessary advertisements have gone out, and in fact sometimes where the skill is currently not available in St. Kitts, we may give them a period in time in which they can operate with an individual from overseas, but then there must be a path through which we expect our people will be trained so that they can have the opportunity. And we are seeking to address those problems, but we encourage persons to engage the department respectfully, the commissioner or officers, and advise of concerns that you may have. They will be receptive to that, and will seek to resolve as best as they can. The commissioner continue to remind us under the remit of the law, right? They can only operate in accordance with where the law is right now, and say that this is how they must operate. Outside of that, then it goes to a different level. But we want to assure that the department is ready and willing to, serve you. And if there are concerns, if there were errors in the past, be assured that we have sought to address those, and we are strengthening our attempt and resolve to move forward.
So we were talking about the Sustainable Development Goals for the United Nations 2030 agenda with respect to labor. If you can tell us a bit about that. And then, of course, to talk a little bit about your week of activities, department's week of activities and the upcoming training for inspectors, and then we wrap up.
Okay. We know that the United Nations has set out a number of sustainable development goals for many of their specialized agencies to arrive at certain decisions in 2030, 2020. In the case of the labor under the International Labour, we are Goal 8. Goal 8 seeks towards ensuring sustained, inclusive, sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. And they are broken down on the Goal 8. They have 10 sub-goals. One has to do with increasing the production output. It has to ensure decent work, eradication of forced labor, removing modern slavery, because very surprisingly that there's a lot of modern slavery taking place throughout the world. We would have seen the case where those refugees coming from Africa into a certain country in the Middle East were enslaved workers, and we find that there's a lot of it. So part of the goal is to ensure the eradication
and in Libya, Lord,
yes,
I saw that
forced labor that is taking place, trafficking of workers throughout it, promoting the rights and standards of workers in ensuring that their work is secure, their work is safe, their work is healthy. and devising and implementing and promoting sustainable jobs, green jobs, to ensure that we are on the path to not only a sustainable income, but that as we work towards in sustaining our economies, we can ensure that the work that people do, which drives our economy, is decent. They receive the right work, the right pay for the right work. The conditions that they work on are safe and healthy.
Okay. Your week of activities. You're observing a week of activities. Tell me something about that.
Our week of activities surrounds World Day for Safety and Health, the International Labor Day, which was May 1st, and it is to bring awareness to safety and health at work. It's also creating a culture of prevention. And so the week started on the 28th, where the permanent secretary, on behalf of the Minister of Labour, gave the usual World Day for Safety and Health address on the 28th day of April. On the 29th, we went to church. We we joined the worship at the Wesley Methodist Church, and except for tomorrow, each day we are in workplace, we are addressing the workers there, particularly those workplaces where they employ large number of young people. We are telling them that yes, you have a right to work, but you have a right to work in a safe and healthy environment, and this is how you can help, because you too have a responsibility to ensure that your workplace is safe, not just ensuring that the employer provided, but when the employer provided, that you utilize the tools and the equipment that are there to safeguard life. We have gone to the learning institution. We've been to AVIC yesterday. We are going on to CFPC, and we are speaking to them not only on the team, we're speaking about transitioning from world of school to the world of work. And tomorrow is our national consultation on a national policy for occupational safety and health. And as the permanent secretary would have said, we are putting the necessary legislative reform in place. For example, the enactment of a modern occupational safety and health legislation that will help to guide and monitor the policy, because it makes no sense having a policy if you don't have legislative direction. And as I would say, it is like throwing sand in the air and trying to catch it.
Okay. Now, in terms of training, I understand that there's an upcoming training for inspectors. Mr. Brown.
On May 23rd to May 25th, there will be a training here. We will have a representative coming from ILO, Mr. Pritzer.
Rainer Pritzer.
And he will be basically helping us to effectively increase our role on the inspection. Finding different ways and looking at trends and patterns and different stuff. And to basically, how should I say it?
Help us in carrying out
the inspection. Right, carrying out the inspection.
Okay, fine. Well, we're out of time. We have to wrap up.
Okay.
So I give each person a minute to wrap up.
1 minute.
1 minute.
I'll see that is possible.
The Department of Labor is here to basically help everyone. We don't take sides. We work for employers as we work for. And working together helps to create decent work. Working together helps to create a safe and healthy working place, working environment. And so we encourage persons, if you have questions, you have information, and you seek knowledge, you can also always come to the Department of Labor, and we will be there to assist you and guide you effectively.
Okay, by minutes, I would want to thank the Commissioner and her team at the Department of Labor for the work that they are doing, the renewed efforts in ensuring that we fulfill our mandate. The inspection team has been out there. We'll continue to move wherever there are areas of weakness. We continue to, on a very regular basis, assess what is happening at the Department of Labor and make the necessary decisions for improvement and increased efficiency. We are not afraid to do that because we have a mandate to fulfill. And also we want to encourage persons that the department is here. The agenda of the department is there for all workers and employers, and we are there to, the ministry is there to support the department and to support our public, our working public. We are all workers. Then also the partners, all of those social partners, I want to thank you for the continued forged relationship that is with the department and the ministry that extends into the labor environment where we can work together and collaborate to ensure that we have the best foot forward in addressing these issues. We are serious and focused and sincere in our partnership with all our stakeholders. And also STEP, I must thank STEP for the continued partnership that they have had with us, and we continue to enjoy in providing us with the resources, being patient with us as we seek to transition workers from STEP into government service. And to all concerned, be assured that we will continue to work with you. The naval program is working for you. The department is working for you. I assure you of that. You may not always be satisfied, but at the end of the day, if you follow the process that we outlined, we will make sure you get your matter resolved.
Mr. Brown.
Basically, in a nutshell, from the inspector's standpoint, we would like to encourage employers to continue dialogue with the Labor Department in the event that you want us to do any training with the staff. Also to all the employees, if they have any concerns at work, any issues, don't be afraid to call us. We'll be there. We're there for them.
Okay.
Always.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Collins and Mr. James, our Labor Commissioner, and Mr. Brown, our lead inspector.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I want to thank you so much for listening to another edition of Working for You. All of you who called in and shared your concerns and made your suggestions and so on, we have heard you and we care about you very much, and we'll try to address those. I am Lesroy Williams, your host for Working for You. We are going to see you for another edition of Working for You next week. Until then, be safe and healthy.
Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Lesroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.